Hello, I'm Corlandos Scott, and I'm an assisted reproductive technologies attorney in Los Angeles. And one of the questions that I often get is, are surrogacy contracts enforceable? Well, let's answer that question for you. So is a surrogacy contract enforceable? Well, I'm going to give you your least favorite lawyer answer. It all depends. Speaking of which, if you haven't yet, click the link and go back to my other video on is surrogacy legal in the US? And I'll talk about the fact that it varies from state to state. So in this video, we'll look at what is a contract, how contract laws were shaped in the US, and what makes your surrogacy contract enforceable or unenforceable. Let's get right into it. So what is a contract anyway? Well, I'm sure you've heard the term contract and you've seen the word contract and you've probably entered into a number of contracts in your life. Let me ask you this. Have you ever taken a trip on a plane? Have you ever bought a bus ticket? Well, you, my friend, have entered into a contract. A contract is simply a legally binding agreement that can be written or verbal between at least two parties. So there's a few things that a contract must have in order to be considered valid or a lawful contract. First, it has to be for a lawful purpose. You can't hold somebody to a contract to break the law. So first, your contract has to be for a lawful purpose. Next, there must be mutual consent. Both sides must actually willfully give their consent to enter into the contract. Thirdly, there needs to be consideration. There needs to be something of value given by both parties. Now, consideration doesn't always mean money, but it has to be something of value. You also have to have at least two competent parties. You couldn't enter into a contract with a person who was unconscious, for instance, or into a contract with a 2-year-old because they're not competent to enter into those types of agreements. And you also need genuine assent. You can't hold a gun to someone's head to make them sign a contract and then say you're bound by the contract. If they don't give you their genuine assent to the agreement, then it's not valid. But if you have all those things, you, my friend, have a valid legal agreement. So how does this whole thing around contracts factor into your surrogacy or assisted reproduction arrangement? Well, the laws around surrogacy are evolving all the time from state to state, so it's important to make sure what the state that you're looking at entering into a surrogacy contract says about what needs to be in the surrogacy contract. Heck, you need to make sure that they even recognize surrogacy contracts to begin with. Let's talk about how surrogacy contract law has been shaped in the US. You may have heard of the Baby M case. The Baby M case was a famous case that eventually turned New York off to the idea of surrogacy altogether. A quick overview of the Baby M case is this. There was a surrogate who also served as the egg donor to create the embryos that she eventually carried to full term. When she gave birth to the child, she surrendered the child to the parents, only to turn around within 24 hours and kidnap the child. Yeah, talk about made-for-TV movie. Yikes. Long story short, the parents sued the surrogate and were able to gain custody of the child. And the court used the process of the best interest of the child to determine that the child's best interest lied in being with the intended parents. The result of the Baby M case was that states started taking a hard, long look at this whole process of surrogacy, and that led some states to ban and outlaw surrogacy, like New York, and consider surrogacy contracts unenforceable. So even though you may have a contract that meets all the criteria that I mentioned about what makes a valid contract, it's important to note that if your state doesn't recognize surrogacy contracts, then still all that paper that you wrote the contract on is just wasted because it's against the law of that state. Now let's talk about another thing that makes contracts enforceable. One of the principles of an enforceable contract is what we call arm's length negotiations. That means that there was not one party that lorded over the other party or had some type of unfair leverage or advantage over the other party, such that it was a distinct difference in who came to the bargaining table. Really, courts want to know that both parties had the right to come to the table and bargain for their positions. And that's why most states that you find say that surrogates and intended parents must be represented by their own individual separate counsel. All right, before I go to my last point, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Yeah, go ahead. Don't worry. I'll wait on you. You're quick. Let's talk about the last point. What does this mean for the enforceability of your surrogacy contract? Well, as I've mentioned time and time again, you want to make sure that the state that you're entering into the agreement in is surrogacy-friendly. And you may be asking, well, does that mean that I have to live in a surrogacy-friendly state? Can my surrogate live in a surrogacy-friendly state? What about if the doctor's in a surrogacy-friendly state? Well, I'll say it like this. Every state has its own laws, but generally speaking, you must have some nexus or connection to the state whose laws you want to claim. So for instance, in California, if any of the medical procedures are happening in California, the transfer or the delivery of the child, then you can claim California law or enter the agreement under California law. If you live in California as the parent, you can work with California law. If your surrogate lives in California and will likely deliver in California, you can claim California law. So there is no one answer to where can you live and what law can you use. Just make sure that you get the advice of a professional to find out where you can undertake your surrogacy journey. If you enjoyed this video and you want to learn more about surrogacy and see if you're ready to start the process, then click the link below and get my free training called Stress-Free Surrogacy. In that training, I walk you through the surrogacy process. I even use examples from previous clients, and I let you know the things that they came to me with, the problems that I helped them out from, and you can avoid those pitfalls and those speed bumps and all that garbage. Make sure you click the link below, get access to the course, and I'll see you in the next video.